Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you the latest installment, my Mission 6 of the narrative scenarios from End Times Nagash. This one is called Death at 9 Demons. Now, I've been doing the latest ones a little bit out of order. I did a couple of them with Anthony from the Sustainable Center, where we kind of hopped ahead a little bit so we can get one in with the dwarves. This one actually occurs a few, even though it's the sixth one in line of the ones that I've done, it's actually a little bit earlier chronologically. So in this one, the write-up is as follows. Eltharion the Grim and his elven war host have arrived at the Glen of Sorrows, only to find that Arkan the Black has already begun the ritual to resurrect Nagash. The High Elves must fight swiftly through a horde of undead if they are to reach the magical circle known as the 9 Demons in Time. But Manfred von Karstein stands ready to slay any hero of Ulthuan who dares to threaten his nefarious plans. So, the way it works is the High Elves are the attackers in this one. And they are required to take Eltharion the Grim on Stormwing. So, he has to be the general. The High Elves also require to take an Archmage by the name of Belinar and a Prince on an Elven Steed. I need to take Manfred, because Count Manfred is the general of my army, and he has to be on a Barded Nightmare. Immediately, it says that the High Elves have the first turn, so that gives the High Elves a pretty serious advantage. In this case, unlike in a couple other missions, Manfred does count towards the Lord's allotment. And I want to stress something, because this was mentioned actually by Anthony at the Sustainable Center when he was talking about this in one of his videos with Malorian. There were no freebies on any of those points in past missions. They were just not counted towards the Lord's allotment. They do get counted towards the actual total points of the army. In this case, Manfred is definitely counted towards the actual Lord allotment. So there are the armies, and this is the battlefield. There are a couple of differences on the battlefield than you might have seen. There is a huge graveyard. If any of you are familiar with the Battle Scroll, which is available on digital download, it allows for the use of something called the Garden of Moor, which gives great regen and channeling and other abilities for undead. You just have to pay additional 200 points of with additional 200 points of core, which is not terribly bad for what you get. That doesn't apply in this case. This mission actually has a Garden of Moor already situated, but it's actually a souped-up garden with some negative effects too. For one, if you're not familiar with some of the abilities, this particular garden is going to be a little bit more powerful. All the fences that are actually fences and not walls are considered ghost fences, so anybody who's behind them will cause fear. That's one thing that he can use to his advantage. There's a Statue of Moor in there that actually will do damage to any units within 6 inches that are undead. So that die 6 strength 4 hits, and that's every magic phase. So that's a big concern. I don't want to get too close. That doesn't actually exist in the standard Garden of Moor. I do have the ability to cast. If I summon anything, I can summon an additional 25 points per casting of summoning points. That's really a big deal. I don't need to build up tokens if I can get the spell off. So that's a huge benefit, and that's each time I cast. Also, the garden affords a regen to any units within 6 inches that are undead, and rerolls to certain units. I didn't take a Terrorgeist, I didn't take a Vargulf or Strigoi Ghoul King, but my Cryptars, if they're within 6 inches, get rerolls. And also, this is probably the biggest bonus. Any spellcasters within 6 inches of that garden get 2 extra channel dice. Massive. Actually, I'm channeling 3 dice on my casters to start. And in addition, this is the haunted battlegrounds also means that any forests are considered haunted, and they give ethereals +1 strength if they're any part of them, even just a sliver of their base is inside the woods. That's another massive deal. It's huge. And so that's why I put my Spirit Host and my Hex Wraiths in the forest to begin with. Now, this battlefield is exactly how it's situated in the book, and you can see in the lower left corner there's kind of like a power circle there with some ruins about it. It's supposed to be 6 inches from the center all and around, and it's a semicircle. This is a barrier. It's a magical barrier. You can't deploy within it. You can't move through it. This is the barrier that the general Eltharion needs to get to and destroy. He's the only one who can affect it, and nothing else in his army can affect it, and even his mount cannot affect it. If he destroys it, it's got 4 wounds, it's got a toughness of 6. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it can be done. He's got enough attacks to do it. If he destroys it, he will wisp away magically, and the game is basically over. Any other method, he loses. If either of his 2 special characters are surviving at the end of the scenario, in addition to his general, it's a massive, crushing victory. If I can kill either of those 2 characters, it's just a regular victory. He does have some other benefits. His Master of Magic, his spellcaster, his Archmage, any wizards within 12 inches of him gets a +1 to Dispel. So he has a boost. I may have lots of dice, but he does have a boost to Dispel, and of course he has the Book of Hoeth. And his other character, any characters within 12 inches have +1 to hit. So those are some nice benefits. And he was supposed to be able to situate himself as far as 18 inches up in a middle area between those 2 forests on his side. He could have had units further back, and I expected that he was going to put bolt throwers as far up as he could, and I was expecting to see lots of reavers, lots of fast cav units, lots of fast moving units. He chose the different route. He chose 2 large blocks of infantry, fairly slow moving, even though they're moving 5, but they got to slog all the way across the battlefield, and I can hold them up. 1 unit of cav, a Frost Phoenix, and his general. But that Banner of the War Dragon and the fact that he has a banner with the of Eternal Flame definitely makes some issues. The benefits that I have with the graveyard are severely neutralized. And here's a picture of his army. You can see that he has his massive block of sword masters sitting right behind another massive block of spearmen, and he's got his flyers behind those, and then he has off to his my right the silver helms. So in the middle I put in my crypt horrors, still within 6 inches, but hoping to hold up the middle. And I tried to I debated putting them on the far side where they would be away from the unit with the flaming banner, but my assumption is if I can find some way to divert or chaff up or hold up that unit with the flaming banner, I could at least use the crypt horrors to go after something else. And that's what I'm hoping to do with the crypt ghouls. And then on the left, again, I'm holding back those dire wolves. I decided not to vanguard them up because I'm hoping to soup them up with some invocations, and I wanted to keep my hex wraiths within range of Manfred's, who's the general, so I could do one of those spirit walks, the soul strides, so I can actually walk through units at 16 inches as opposed to just as regular 8. And first turn goes to the High Elves. So he moves up with everything. He moves his that's not a Flaming Phoenix, by the way. That is a Frost Phoenix. He moves up his Frost Phoenix off over to my right. He rolls for magic because there's no combat, and I get a big phase. All 3 of my wizards are within 6 inches of the terrain that allows them to channel, so I'm channeling heavily. So he tries to use Walk Between Worlds, and I dispel it. And then he tries to do I believe a Thunderbolt that goes through and does only one wound on my spirit host, and I dispel his wild form. So he didn't have much of a phase. My channeling pretty severely counters his power with magic. So with 2 dice left, I stored it for my phase using the Black Periap, and Vampire counts turn 1. So I shuffle my crypt horrors more towards the middle to give room for my crypt ghouls to sweep around the edge of the graveyard, hoping that maybe I can charge them in or charge both of them in. I move one of my zombie units into the graveyard with my level 1 of Death, who just hoping to maybe get within range of some characters that he has for some spirit leeching. And I get another big magic phase. Again, I'm rolling high. I've got 2 dice stored. I've got extra channels. I'm essentially rolling 9 dice for channeling. So I work on a few spells that he manages to stop. One of which is invocation, and then I decide I want to bolster that zombie unit that's in the graveyard. I figure that it's probably going to get charged by one of those units, potentially the spearmen. And I didn't want to lose my level 1 with my Dispel Scroll so quickly, so I needed to bolster them up. And I couldn't add in additional zombies, so I managed to summon a White King, and I gave him some additional abilities. I gave him the Dragon Bane Helm, so he's got nice defenses against the Flaming Banner, and I gave him the Pigeon Pluck shield, he has a save versus flyers, which is nice because I see that Frost Phoenix is coming down my way. So that affords me a token that I can now use on successive turns for any other summoning, which is nice. I'm going to try and build those up and try and get some really big stuff. And then the magic phase ends and I store 2 more dice. So High Elf's turn 2. So he further moves up and he doesn't do any charging, and he switches around some of his flyers. He moves his general further back behind his Swordmasters along with his Frost Phoenix. So I get another big phase, lots of channeling. I managed to dispel Soul Quench. I dispel Wild Form and Walk Between Worlds because I have so many dice. And he throws down 3 dice and gets off Harmonic, but it's an irresistible. I mean, it's a miscast on 3 dice. I know that pain. I've done it before. It doesn't do anything to him. He rolls a 7. His main caster is on a mount, not within units. Nobody else takes any damage, but he does get the Harmonic Convergence off. I'm just glad it wasn't the Walk Between Worlds or the Soul Quench. So I still had 2 dice left over. Once again, I store 2 dice in the Periap, and the turn 2 for the Vampire counts, I start declaring charges. Now, I want to try and start wheeling down this Swordmaster unit, and I have a very long charge here with my Black Knights with Manfred. So I throw them both out there, thinking that even if the Black Knights don't make it, I still have a very large unit of Cryptars here to whittle down this Swordmaster unit to a more reasonable size. And I do fail with the Black Knights. It was a little bit of a long charge, probably not the wisest move, but I got to move up, and I'm still in a position where I can raise up more of these direwolves with invocations. But I get in easily with the Cryptars, so this should be an interesting fight. And the White King that I just summoned joins the Ghoul unit that's moved now, again, around the side of the graveyard with the expectation that the Spearmen are going to charge that unit. So I move out the zombies then to the other side of the graveyard. And they're there to just take away his Spearman's rank bonuses or maybe potentially get a rear charge. And I repositioned my Hex Wraiths. I want to push them off to the middle. I'm figuring, look, he's not going to take the bait off to the side. I've got the Black Knights there in case he does move to the other side of that forest. And I move my Spirit Host further up. And another huge magic phase. I'm just absolutely swimming in dice. So I managed to get off Hellish Vigor. He fails to dispel it. So I throw that, of course, on my Cryptars. I attempt to raise dead with another unit of zombies. He dispels that. I tried to throw another Van Hales. I fail that as well. And then I tried to cast Soul Blight, and he managed to dispel that additionally. So he had a pretty good phase because I rolled really high, and he managed to channel, but he managed to neutralize everything else that I had for that phase. And with the successful casting, I was able to remove the wound that was previously put on the Spirit Host. And then I stored 2 extra dice. So I didn't press my luck, and I need the dice to help me with defense and dispelling on his phase. So close combat. I take off an entire row of his Swordmasters, which is not that bad. Of course, I take a lot of wounds back. He was able to strike first. I got stomps, and he's strength 5, I'm toughness 5. He has the Banner of the Royal Dragon, which has no impact here. But so he wipes out all but, I think, 3 of the Cryptars, and one of them has a wound on him. So, High Elf's turn 3. So, charges. He declares charges with the Spearman. He had to do it. If he didn't, I was going to get the charge for both of these units into his flank and his frontage. At least if he declares a charge, he can start whittling down this Ghoul unit. And he looks to also charge with his Frost Phoenix. The Frost Phoenix fails, and the Spearmen get in. I'm pretty happy about the possibilities, even though he has the Banner of Flame. And he moves up his Silver Helms. I guess it may have been a chaff move. I'm not sure why he didn't just try to charge that Spirit Host. And then he swings his general all the way off to the far left. And then magic, he gets nothing off, and then close combat. And the Cryptars are completely wiped out, which is not a big surprise. And we have a bloodbath between the ghouls and the spearmen. So, Vampire counts turn 3. I see a mistake that he makes. He's left me an avenue for my Hex Wraiths to then charge at his Silver Helm. So I'm going to start plucking off Silver Helms. So I have a good chance that I could wipe out this unit and maybe take out one of his major characters. As well as I do a charge with the zombies that were on the other side of the graveyard. So I turn Manfred and the Black Knights such that if his general moves on either side of that forest, I'm going to be able to charge him. And magic. I get, again, another big phase, and I'm able to summon with my Master Necromancer a unit of 5 Crypt Horrors. So I lost 1 unit of Crypt Horrors, and now I've got a unit of Crypt Horrors to replace it almost as strong. And I had to put them within 12 inches of the caster, so I put them situated near the barrier so that if the general does get past me, I've got something to threaten it with. So close combat. These Silver Helms take 3 casualties, but he sticks. Always strikes first is a huge factor in the ghoul fight. I lose a few zombies, not such a big of a deal. But the ghouls completely flub. I lose more than, I think, like 10 or 12 more ghouls. So they're dying really quickly to these strength 3 spearmen. So High Elves turn 4. He declares charge with the Swordmasters against Direwolves, and he'll get in there against both of them. And then he tries to charge with the Frost Phoenix against an opening in the frontage of the zombies. He gets in there. So magic, he throws all his dice at Walk Between Worlds. Irresistible. He takes no wounds from it, and he manages to not just get his general past that forest, but just a hair out of my charge arc. And more Silver Helms die to the fight with the Hex Wraiths, but he sticks still again. And of course, the dogs die when facing the Swordmasters. And the ghouls just crumble completely all the way through. I managed to get a couple of wounds off with my White King, but the big deal here is the zombies not only do a wound to the Phoenix, the Frost Phoenix also doesn't do hardly anything to the zombies. And the end result is both of these units are still tar-pitted up with nearly 2 ranks of zombies. And the Spearmen, having won the combat, now reform in a bus formation to face my zombies. So, Vampire Count's turn 4. I charge my Spirit Host into the side of the Spearmen, trying to give a little help to holding the Spearmen back. And I make one of several mistakes in the remainder of the game. The first of which is I turn around my Black Knight bus, thinking of course he's going to charge the barrier. I'll just countercharge him and kill him. But that of course exposes my rear to a charge from behind. And I move my Master Necromancer with his zombie bunker further up, because really everything that's happening behind me I don't care about. All I'm concerned about right now is the general. So I cast Raise Dead by Manfred, and I Irresistible again on 3 dice. So I get a bunch of zombies off. I get 11 zombies off. And here's the next mistake I make. I don't conga line it, and I really could have and should have. I kind of figured, you know what, he's probably going to charge this unit. If I put something else in front, which is what my intention is, I want to put at least enough that if he whittles through it, which he probably could with enough attacks, he could get crumbling effect where he'll just be able to overrun into the barrier anyway. So I want to at least get a rank so that I would be able to have a better chance to stop him. But this probably wasn't the smartest move. I probably should have just conga lined it further up, and that probably would have been the answer and probably would have been the game. And the backlash, thankfully, was only a 7. So I rolled 7 and lost a couple of Black Knights. This could have been even worse. Manfred could have gotten sucked into the warp, and thankfully that didn't happen. And I flub my attacks with the Spirit Host and with the other zombies. It didn't really matter. I don't think if I rolled like a champ that it would have mattered. He pops everything and reforms his Spearmen as follows. And this is exactly the point that I was making earlier. This was a huge mistake. Look at that absolutely perfect charge at my rear flank. And I managed to kill off 2 more of the Silver Helms and finally break this unit. But I failed to run them down. So High Elves turn 5. He declares a whole bunch of charges. And he puts his Swordmasters into my Crypt Horror. So then he charges, of course, the Spearmen right into the backside of those Black Knights. and his Frost Phoenix into the rear of the zombies. So of course he charges the barrier and easily makes it. So I'm in real trouble here. He doesn't have a whole lot of attacks, but if he rolls real well, he could take this barrier down in one turn. So the Swordmasters easily make it into my 5 remaining Cryptars, and the Spearmen, of course, make it into the Black Knights, as does the Phoenix into the zombies. He rallies up his last remaining Silverhelm and the character Lord that's in there with it. I dispel all his magic. He has no other magic this phase, which is great. But his general starts going to town on this barrier. Now, his mount can't attack it. He only can attack it. And he does, he's with a lance. He does 3 wounds out of his 4. So the barrier has 1 wound left. I'm sweating here. I was thinking that if he took it out in 1 turn, that's the end of the game. But now there's a little bit of life left in this game, and there's a good chance that I can actually make it back. So the combat with the Spearmen, I whiff. I flub terribly with Manfred. I only kill 1 Spearman, so I only get 1 die, and he even manages to do a wound onto Manfred. And I lose a Black Knight for my efforts as well. And I only kill off maybe 5 Spearmen. He doesn't break because he's steadfast. And now I can't charge. I can't charge anybody out of the unit. I can cast spells, which is fine, but I've effectively handed him the game unless I can somehow pop these Spearmen. So his Swordmasters rip into my Cryptars, doing a whole ton of wounds. I only do a few wounds back. And amazingly enough, his Frost Phoenix does not do a whole lot to my zombies. So Vampire Count's turn 5, I've got options, and look at that. I've also got 3 summon tokens. That's also a big deal, because none of my casters are now within range of the garden, so I don't get the extra 25 points. So I charge the Hex Wraiths into the now rallied last Silverhelm and his Lord, and I make it in easily. He passes his Terror test. I move up my level 1 to death, Necromancer to death, with the hope that I could potentially do some Spirit Leeching, gain some dice back. But I have a huge magic phase once again. Even though I'm not next to the garden, I still manage to channel and roll a good phase. And with all those, I make a mistake. I could have gone for Fate of Bajuna and probably ended the game right here. So that was another misstep. I made a number of them in this game. Instead, I'm thinking along a different line of logic. I'm thinking Doom and Darkness, Spirit Leech, and Summoning. And I'll tell you how this goes. So I throw Doom and Darkness down. He dispels it. I throw Spirit Leech down to try and take some wounds off of his general, and he dispels it. But I managed to get all the rest of my dice into a summoning spell. Again, didn't thinking about a Fate of Bajuna, which again probably would have done it, probably would have ended the game, probably would have killed off his general right there. I'm thinking something a lot more ambitious and sounded totally cool, at least in my mind, and it is, but it does have some downsides, and you'll see what I mean. I managed to get this Kandarak off, which means with my tokens I'm able to summon, yep, you guessed it, a Terrorgeist. And I throw that Terrorgeist down. He's easily within 8 inches of his general. And of course, the situation is that it's not a shooting attack; it's a magical attack, but it is distributed as shooting. So he gets to randomize it between his mount and his lord. So I do a whole bunch of hits. I do a whole bunch of wounds, and I only do 3 wounds to his general. He's got 1 wound left. So after all this, I threw down a massive Terrorgeist, did a shit kicker scream, and wasn't able to put the nail in the coffin, as they say, for this. And it's unfortunate, but that's pretty critical. I gave him an opportunity to actually survive another round. I could have finished it off here, and I didn't. So High Elves turn 6. In the magic phase, he's trying to reduce the effectiveness of my Terrorgeist, so he gets off a boosted spell. I forget exactly what it was, Soul something, and he does 2 wounds on my Terrorgeist. So the Terrorgeist is now less effective in its screaming potential. So I kill off the last of his Silverhelms, and his Prince breaks and runs, and I pursue and I run him down, which is great, but it's not going to really have an effect on the overall fight. And of course, that last remaining Cryptar, he did his job, and this was a summon unit anyway. The Swordmasters just rip him apart. And then they reform to potentially threaten the flank of Manfred and the Black Knights. But that doesn't matter, because Manfred and the Black Knights, which sounds like a really awful rock band. In any case, Manfred only, again, rolls poorly. I just had a really bad rolling day. I don't think I could have finished off the entirety of this unit anyway, because they're still going to outnumber me. But I managed to kill off about 4 of them. I'm still stuck. At least I still have the ability to cast spells if the game lasts that long. And then his Phoenix finally wakes up and rips up a whole bunch of my zombies, which I don't really care about because, again, it's not going to have any impact on the fight, and I have enough that I'm going to survive even after Crumble. But his general then gets to have the final action of the game, and only 1 wound did he need to do. He's got 3 wounds on his Griffin. He's got 3 wounds on his general. But he only needed to do 1. There's 3 wounds on the barrier. He only needed to do 1, and he rolls it, and the barrier pops. And as the scenario dictated, it then magically wisps away his general to we know not where. You'll have to check in the fluff in the actual End Times book if you want to find out any more about that. And that is the game. So the barrier comes down. The High Elves win. Here's a picture of the battlefield. Final thoughts. This was a fun game. It was close. We were wheeling left and right, using every strategy we could. I made a number of mistakes. I could have put this game away, but even if I did, it would have come down to the last few turns, and that is the best of games. I think he had some advantages that he played well with, and he managed to mitigate some of mine. And I made some, my poor mistakes gave him openings that he capitalized on. So good game to my opponent, a ton of fun. It swung all over the place. And early in the game, it looked like I was doing very, very well. Probably more so than it even looks in the battle report. But things definitely did turn. Not the least of which is because I had a couple of brain cramps and a couple of bad general ideas that didn't come to fruition or gave him an opening. And either way, I think it still works with the narrative. Manfred survives. The High Elves win. There may be a bump in the road in terms of bringing Nagash back, but we all know that eventually he's going to come back. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a great day.